Hey guys, welcome back to the channel PhD Live and to another episode of Decoding PhD Interview Questions at IIM with me, Vasil. Today we have Mr. Nagarjun, who has got selected into Finance and Accounting area at IIM Udaipur. Hi Nagarjun,
Hi, thank you
how
for
are you
that.
doing
I'm doing
today?
good. How are you?
I'm fine. Nagarjun, let's get into the questions.
Sure,
So tell us something about your background, like education background.
sure. So I've done masters and bachelor's in commerce, and then qualified UGC NET. After that, I worked with Ernst and Young for a brief period of a year, and then shifted to academics. So I worked for a private college for a period of 2 years. I taught undergraduate commerce students, and then recently, for a brief period of 3 or 4 months, I work with a faculty at IIM Udaipur as a research assistant, part-time remote research assistant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your motivation basically for getting into PhD and
Uh,
research?
yeah. So I always wanted to be a professor. Like from a very young age, I would say when I was in 11th or 12th standard, I decided that I want to be a teacher. So during my college days, I started teaching in a tuition center, and then I had my own tuition center. So that's how I developed my passion and interest. So that saying that I know that research is an integral part of being a professor. So I started working on doing my own things of learning about research, getting to know about how to develop that interest. And then obviously, I know PhD is a must to be a professor. And then that's one way of motivation why I wanted to do PhD. And then I learned about the publications, research process during my master's days. So that was intriguing for me to take up this journey of PhD. Yeah,
Oh, that's so early to take a decision about a career like becoming a professor, 11th, 12th.
maybe, but that gave me a strong story to convince others. Maybe.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that shows your passion for
Yeah.
being an academician. Right,
Yes.
so your specialization interest, how did you get into finance and
Uh,
accounting?
the thing is, I was interested in behavioral studies.
Oh,
So I had two options in front of me, either behavioral finance or consumer behavior. So I was applying for both finance and accounting area and also for marketing area. So the thing is, I know that I want to do my research in behavioral studies. So I started looking up for the areas which are directly related to behavioral studies. That's what is behavioral finance and consumer behavior. So once I've drawn to that particular question, it was easy for me to decide upon the areas. Obviously, it's finance and accounting and marketing. So that's how I decided. And then that gave me tough time, I should say, because it was really difficult for me to convince the faculties that I'm interested in behavioral studies, that's why I'm applying for these two areas, because faculties again and again ask me this question. Finance and accounting, marketing are totally two unrelated areas, like totally different areas. Why are you interested in that? PhD is where you have to be focused on a particular area, but you have applied to a totally two different areas. So are you confused? That's a question that I have to face every single interview. Okay. And as a commerce graduate, we are naturally expected to be in finance and accounting area, so it was easy for me to convince. But when it comes to marketing, it was not at all an happy thing to say, because how much ever I tell them that I'm interested in consumer behavior, they'll not believe me because there is no solid proof in my profile. So one faculty even told me, I couldn't see anything related to marketing in your profile. How do I believe that you want to do PhD in marketing? She asked me directly. So that's when I realized I have to take up something in marketing area. That's when I joined this research assistant position in marketing area. So
oh,
that sailed me through that. Yeah.
oh, that's nice. And yeah, this is true that when we come from finance and accounting background whole our life and
Yeah.
suddenly we apply for some other area for interviews, they'll ask us to justify our act.
Yes.
Why did you go for another area? So I don't know. It's always there. Like it's always there for us to if we apply in some other area, they'll just seriously ask us, how do you justify this?
Yeah,
And it's
and we
very
should,
tough. Yeah,
as a aspirant, we should prepare a solid answer for that question. If not, we'll have a tough time in the interview.
yeah, true, true,
Yeah.
true. If you don't justify that, then you're out of the game.
Yes, the faculties won't find you as a good fit for the program. That will be a trouble later on. It's a
Yeah,
double-sided knife, I would say.
true, true. So, what all colleges did you apply for, Nagarjun?
Uh, yeah, I applied around 13 IIMs. So, except for Bangalore, Calcutta, and then some third generation IIMs I didn't apply for. For example, Sarmar, and then Sambalpur. So, yeah, those IIMs, Nagpur, I didn't apply for those IIMs. Other than that, I've applied around 13 IIMs. I went through the faculty profiles. I saw the faculties who are interested either in behavioral finance or consumer behavior, and then I decide upon whether to apply for the particular IIM or not. So that was the selection process of IIM, which I had personally. Yeah,
Okay, and how many IMs did you get shortlisted for interviews?
except for Indore and Ahmedabad, I've got shortlisted for all other IIMs. Lucknow, Udaipur, Trichy, not Trichy didn't shortlist me. Yeah, three IIMs didn't. The other 10, I gave interviews. Yeah,
Oh, that's a huge
the whole
number.
lot of interview. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
since I applied for two areas in each IIMs, it's like almost 15 to 18 interviews I've given.
yeah, absolutely. Like the number talks, right?
Yes.
10 IMs with
Yeah.
two areas, right? Maybe in Udaipur, it's only one area, I
Yeah,
suppose.
Udaipur, we are supposed to apply only to one area, and some IIMs had combined interviews. For example, Amritsar and
Oh,
Shillong, even though I applied for two areas, they keep
mhm.
the interviews together. Like the faculties from both the areas will be there, and they'll be having their own time to ask questions from the area. For example, Amritsar interview went on for 40 minutes, where there was a faculty from another area. He asked me questions about my PhD motivation and then statistics, and the other two faculties were from finance and marketing area. So those two took care of those particular areas. So it was like around 15 minutes for each area and 10 minutes of common questions. That's how it was.
Okay. So usually everybody has this pre-interview anxiety,
Yeah.
like panic, tension, and how will the interview go, and coming up with scenarios in their heads and something like that. So how did you cope up with something like that if you had?
It took me a long time to cope up with that, I should say, because I started giving interviews like 1.5 years back. So I've given multiple interviews in this 1.5 years, which made me little prepared for the interview process. So that gave me the confidence and motivation to face up these interviews. So it took me time, and with time, with preparation, with more practice, uh, I got used to the process, I should say.
Okay, in the interview, like there might be some questions which you might not know how to answer, or maybe you couldn't answer them properly, or you got like, where did this question come from?
Yeah,
And some questions which would have disturbed you in the interview, like when it was flowing, suddenly
yeah.
you get some breaks right in between. So how
Even
did you get through that?
in Udaipur interview itself, the first round of interview, the faculty started with basically tell me about yourself, and then they picked questions from that. Since I told them I worked as an assistant professor, they asked me which paper you taught. So I told them it's management accounting, and then they came up with questions from that area. But uh, I wasn't expecting such silly questions from them. Silly questions in the sense very basic questions. But on that moment, I was not ready for that. I was expecting some like huge questions or difficult ones to crack. I was expecting like that, but they asked me basic questions like accounting principles, accounting concepts, where I struggled to answer. It was surprising for me that I was not able to answer such basic questions. Then the faculties understood that I'm little stressed over there. Then they were like, okay, we'll leave it, no problem. It's fair. We'll start with, then they asked me which area you want to work on. I told them it's behavioral finance. Then they started asking questions from that area. So as an aspirant, we should not be disheartened after not answering 2 or 3 questions, I should say. Because I didn't answer around 4 questions. First 4 questions I didn't answer. And then the interview got well. It was decent, and I got selected. So it doesn't matter, I guess.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like this happens,
Yeah,
right? In everybody's interviews, there will be some questions we won't be able to answer. So
sure.
it should be fine. And also, like they really ask you basic questions. Even I have gone through the same thing. They ask me what is debit, credit.
Yeah,
Very, very like I don't know why they come up with questions like that. Maybe if because there are people who come into studying MBA from
yeah,
engineering background and stuff who wouldn't know anything. Like
yeah.
they won't know what is asset, what is a liability,
Yes.
and we people are from finance,
Commerce background. Yeah,
commerce background all our life. So we would directly start with using that terms, okay, and they won't be understanding. Maybe that's why they ask us questions like this to just
maybe.
to check whether we'll be fit for becoming a professor.
And
And
when we sit for an interview, it's better that we go through all these basic things before the interview. Not only concentrating on the advanced concepts, but also on the basics. That makes sure that you are ready for the interview.
yeah, true. I completely agree with this. So, how was your interview experience at Udaipur?
So they had 2 rounds of interview. The first round of interview is fully on the knowledge that you possess in that particular area. So they, as I told you, they started with the basic questions from management accounting, the basic accounting, and then I told them, since I'm aware about the area that I want to work on, I particularly told them, ma'am, I want to work on this particular area. Then they started asking questions on on that particular area. For example, behavioral finance. So they started asking questions like who's the father of behavioral finance, who found the area, what's the groundbreaking research in that particular area, for example, prospect theory, mental accounting, and then who are the like Nobel laureates from that particular area, what have they done, and have you read any recent articles from that area, why do you have your interest in that particular area. And also Udaipur had asked us to prepare, uh, they've sent us 2 research articles from finance, and then they've asked us to prepare any one of those 2 articles for the interview. So they'll be asking questions from that also. I think that's where I've scored a lot, because comparatively I'm saying, because the accounting questions I couldn't manage, and then when I moved to this behavioral finance area and also the paper, and luckily my master's thesis was somewhere related to that particular paper what they have sent, so it was easy for me to convince them that I'm really interested. That's the first round. Then the next day we had the second round of interview, where it was more of a personal interview to check your motivation, to check your attitude towards the course, whether you have gone through the Udaipur's website, whether you know everything about the faculty, who are the faculties who are interested in the particular area, and have you read any faculty's research article. So they checked all those things, and then also uh, they asked me a question, which is an important question I feel, because they asked me, where else have you applied, and where do you keep IIM Udaipur among those IIMs? I told them I've got chocolates from so many IIMs. Then they asked me, where do you keep Udaipur among these IIMs? That was one question. I told them that I keep it next to Lucknow. If I get to Lucknow, I'll go to Lucknow. If not, I'll come to Udaipur. That was my answer. Then faculty asked me why particularly are saying Lucknow over Udaipur. Then I had to give them reasoning, saying that there are 2 faculties who are really interested in that particular area. They have recently published A or A star category journals. So I had to convince them with proper reasons.
Okay, so you have offer letters from other IIMs as well, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, I was placed in waitlist by IIM Vizag and Kashipur, and then I later on converted Vizag, but that's for marketing area, and also from IIM Shillong, that is for finance and accounting area. So in total, I have three converts, and then I had Kashipur waitlist, which I don't know the exact moment now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did the interviews in other IIMs go in which you got
Yeah,
selected?
Shillong, it was totally positive interview, I should say, because from the start, I could answer almost 90% of the questions, and I can see that the faculties were uh, uh, satisfied with my answers, or they were okay with my performance in the interview. And then again, there I had to face the questions like why marketing. And one big mistake, what I did is I thought if I put marketing as my preference one and finance as my preference two, I can easily convince the marketing faculties that I'm really interested in marketing area. So that's one mistake I did. What that made is it backfired me when I was attending finance interviews. So I was not able to convince the faculty that I'm really interested in this area. They told me, then why have you put it in preference two? So that question I was not able to convince them. But I was able to answer the other questions, so I somehow think it's balanced out.
So, Nagarjun, you also have offer letters from other IIMs, right?
Yes.
So, how was the interview experience there, and what were the questions they asked? From which particular areas did they
Yeah.
ask you the
So
questions?
as a candidate for finance and accounting area, they expect you to be strong with statistics. So that was one area we have to take care of. So they asked me questions like, what are the tools that you have already used in masters? Which are the tools that you are aware about? And what is the research methodology that you have mentioned in the proposal? So whether you know everything about the particular tool or not, that were the questions on statistics part, and also the basics of finance and accounting. In Udaipur interview, they've clearly asked me whether you want to work on finance or accounting. Since it's finance and accounting area, they asked me whether it's finance or accounting. So I have to take the call. If I'm taking the call, then I have to be sure about it. So that's what they were expecting. So, and then you have to mention your specific interest in that particular area. We would have already mentioned it in our SOP, but still it will be good that when you mention it and you drive the interview towards that particular area. So when I say I'm interested in behavioral finance, the obviously the next 4 5 questions are going to be from that area. So we can be easily approaching those questions. We can easily tackle those questions comparatively. If they put a question from overall finance, it will be difficult for us because we can't expect everything to know. Yeah, that was one thing. And that's how it is. One part motivation, then statistics, and then finance basics. So that's how the interviews were.
So, particularly when we talk about statistical questions,
Yeah.
right, in the interviews at IIMs for finance and accounting area, how much do they expect you to know already from statistics?
For me, the scenario was different since I was working as a research assistant. So I told them that I'm working on a project. So they asked me, what are the tools that you're using? So I have to tell them I was working on R, the programming language, which I was learning by myself. The thing is, I'm not taking up any course or something like that. So I started working on learning things from Google. I was going through the codes, and we are not from computer science background, so we don't know the codes at all, right? So I had to learn everything from Google. So the thing is, in Shillong interview, the faculty asked me. He gave me two codes. He told me that what is library and require in R, which I don't know. I know library, but I don't know require. So I couldn't answer that question. He was like, it's very basic. But I told him, sir, I'm learning by myself. I'm taking up the Google's help to learn the language. So I don't know. He was like, okay, that's fine. But then they asked me, what is the methodology that you're using? I told them, since it is a qualitative study, we were using data miners also. So the software they asked me, and then the statistical tools. Those were basic questions from the tools that we used. For a candidate who don't have a research experience, they won't go this deep. There'll be basic questions, but for me it was different.
How did you prepare your SOP, and like you have to give a proposal in some
Yeah.
IIMs, and in some IIMs you have to give SOPs. So
Yeah.
how did you draft them and how
Yes.
did you write? Just tell us
Sure.
about it.
So when it comes to SOP, I've I met a lot of seniors last year in WhatsApp or LinkedIn. I've connected with them. I've asked them what have they written in their SOPs. So from that, I've got an idea what should be there in an SOP. So based on that, I started with my past achievements or my experience. That was my first paragraph, and then I started with why I want to do PhD, why in this particular area, and then what is the problem that I want to work on, and then I moved to my future expectations from the institute, and how do I fit with the institute's expectation. So that's how I concluded my last paragraph. And most of the IIMs have asked us to keep it precise, maybe within 500 words. That's how they've asked us. So I had to edit it for the different IIMs. And what I did is I mentioned that certain faculties are interested in my research interest, if they are available. So I would have mentioned that. So before starting with the SOP itself, what I did, I created an Excel file with uh, different tabs like name of the institute, and then the faculties who are interested in behavioral finance or consumer behavior, since I applied for two areas. So I used to take a note of them, and then I search for their publications in Google Scholar or ResearchGate, and I hyperlink those publications in the Excel file itself. So whenever I prepare for an interview or SOP, I go through their publications, I go through their research profile, and then I adjust my SOP for that. And before the interview, I go through the publications, and I also deliberately mention that in the interview to to make my case strong over there. Yeah, so that's what I did.
Okay. So even research proposal, how
Yeah.
did you draft that?
So since I was working as an assistant professor, I had my colleagues who have taken up projects from multiple agencies, so they had that experience. That really helped me. So I know how a research proposal looks or works. So, but to start with a proposal, first of all, you need a problem, you need a research question, right? So that's where I spent a lot of time. I went through different articles, different review articles, because review articles gives you the whole scenario within a short span, right? So that helped me. I went through the review articles. Based on the review articles and also the suggestions from the authors, what have they mentioned, what are the future recommendations they've made from the article. So I used all those sources for my research proposal.
So what went wrong in the interviews which you couldn't crack, like some unsuccessful interview
Yeah,
experiences? Can you share some of them with us?
as I told you already, one mistake that I made is putting marketing as my preference band and finance as preference too. That gave me a tough time during the interviews. So I was not able to convince the faculty. And also another mistake, uh, I didn't prepare basics much. I was going through all advanced concepts, but not the basics. So that's another mistake that I did. And also, when it comes to statistics, you mention a particular tool only if you know everything, or at least 50% of that particular tool. For example, if I'm saying that I'm good with regression, then you should know the types of regression or the basics of regression. Other than, if not, you should not mention it, you should not bring it up in an interview. So that's one mistake I did, because we were just started working on that particular tool. So I told them, then they started asking questions from that. So that was the mistake that I did in an interview. These were the mistakes. Other than that, it was fine. Yeah.
Okay. So you had some past research experience, is it?
Yeah, I worked with IIM Udaipur, faculty at IIM Udaipur as a research assistant for a brief period of 3 4 months. That's not a huge experience, I would say, but it really helped me a lot. Whatever I've learned in my master's as a research course or something, or master's thesis, more than that I've learned in this research assistant question. So if someone is looking for PhD in future, maybe after a year or two, then I would suggest them to take up this research assistant or an academic assistant question. That will really help them to get the experience well in advance.
Okay. So, Nagarjun, how did you come to the decision that it is Udaipur, IIM Udaipur,
Yeah.
among other offer letters which you
Yes.
have?
So the three options that I had was Udaipur, Vizag, and Shillong. So when you look at the research output of the faculties, and it's not about the number of publications, it's about the quality of publications. So a faculty may have, I'm not discriminating based on that, but if a faculty has like 3B or 3A publications, if a faculty has only one publication, even if it is A star, then I'll go with the A star faculty. That's what I had in my mind. And when I went through the faculty profile, that's what I preferred even before anything else. So that's why I selected Udaipur over the other two comparatively. And I made a pros and cons list for each IIM, and then I compared it, which one should I go with. So I had a tough fight between Vizag and Udaipur, and then I took up Udaipur, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of research before getting into
Yes,
PhD.
I had to. I had to.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
So, what are your future plans like post PhD?
As of now, I'm planning to join postdoc after PhD. So that's my plan as of now. I don't know how it changes post PhD, but that's the plan now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So finally, can you give some tips and suggestions to the PhD aspirants who are coming up?
Sure. So, as an aspirant, the first step that you should do is to decide in which area you want to work on, decide your research interest. So if you have taken that first step, then obviously you'll have an idea what you want to do next. That should be your first step. Once that is cleared, then you should look at the institute's website, the profile of faculties who are interested in that particular area, and go through their publications, go through their current workings, what is happening in that particular area. For example, if I'm saying behavioral finance, what is the recent research that's happening in that particular area? So once you are aware about those researches, then you'll have some idea what's happening, what you should do, what you should be able to contribute to that particular area. That will give you some basic view of that particular area. Then you can work on the application process, quantitative things like your degree percentage, postgraduate percentage, or your scores that you're applying with either CAT, GRE, GMAT, or JRF. So these are quantitative figures, but the qualitative figures are what is going to decide your shortlist. That is SOP, research proposal, and then the letter of recommendations. So these are the things that is going to help you to give that confidence to the faculties that you are a potential candidate. So once you work on those qualitative things, then I think you'll get a shortlist. Only then you'll be able to convince the faculties. Only if you get an opportunity, you can convince them. So to get a shortlist, you need strong SOPs and proposals. So that you should be working on. Yeah.
So all that Arjun is saying, before becoming a PhD aspirant or getting into PhD, you should start research way before. Like
Yes.
even to get into PhD, you have to be done with so much research about PhD and the colleges and the faculty, and then go about and apply for the colleges.
Actually, one faculty from Udaipur appreciated me for doing that research. So that gives you an edge over other candidates.
So that's a great insight that you have given us, Nagarjun. Thank you so much for coming on our platform and sharing your experience. It was a great experience about knowing you and having this insightful conversation. I hope this would be very, very helpful for all the PhD aspirants, for specifically for finance and accounting, because it's a vast area. It's just not a small thing, and we have so many areas to explore more within finance and accounting, and it becomes very difficult for us when we sit for an interview. So thank you so much for coming here and sharing your experience.
Thank you. When I was an aspirant last year, I went through a lot of videos like this that gave me these inputs, and also I spoke to more seniors and alumni who gave me multiple inputs and multiple ideas to go with. So I think I should do this so that the next year aspirants can get somewhere useful information. Yeah. Thank you
Okay.
for inviting me. Yeah.
Thank you, Nagarjun.
Thank you.
So, if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and spread it among all the PhD aspirants you would be knowing. It would be very helpful for them. And I'll see you next time